There's a new book out from Real Clear Publishing. It's titled Branding Democrats, a top-to-bottom reimagining of campaign strategies by Ken Weber and Daryl Weber. Ken is president of Weber Asset Management, an investment firm based out of New York. And his son, Daryl Weber, is a brand strategist who's worked with Coca-Cola, Nike, Johnny Walker, Google, and others. And they wrote this book. It's just a remarkable deep dive into how Democrats need to be establishing a brand and then, using that brand to win elections. And I wanted to share it with you, and I wanted to share them with you. Ken Weber and Daryl Weber, welcome to the program, guys.
Great to be here.
Glad to have you. So, I'll let either one of you jump in. I'm not sure who wants to speak to which of these topics, but let's just kind of go through the book here. And I love the chapter summaries that you've got at the end of each chapter. It makes it so easy to really, grok the book. You talk about branding and what branding is. Let's first of all define what is branding and how have Republicans been successful at it and Democrats failed at it.
Daryl, go ahead.
I can take that. Yeah. Branding is different. We make sure to be clear how it's different from marketing, especially in the political world. We think Democrats are pretty good at the sort of marketing of politics, where they're getting out yard signs or mailers, and they're doing it for each individual candidate, each campaign as it comes up. But the key thing, and that's what we're focusing on here, is the branding is actually much more long-term than that. It's much deeper, much more emotional. A brand stays with you for a very long time. It stands for deeper, something emotional, and it affects how you make decisions and how you think about something. So for Democrats, we see each campaign comes up, every candidate has to create their own individual personalized brand, whereas there should be a much clearer, cohesive, overarching Democrat brand that goes over all of them, so that every Democrat can use that and benefit from it.
Didn't FDR kind of create that and in fact, I've got a quote from Harry Truman. It would take me longer to dig it out and play it for you than it's probably worth, but where he says, the Republican Party has been the party of the rich forever, and the Democratic Party is the only party that stands for the average working person. I mean, wasn't there a time in America where there was a fairly broad consensus that the Democrats' brand was organized labor, blue collar, and the average guy?
Yeah. So let me just say that we talk about marketing is like, our shoes are on sale this week, buy our shoes. Branding is like Rolex. They take out full page ads. They never talk about the watch, but they impart a feeling of this is luxury. We want people to know that Democrats fight for the people, continually fight for the people. One of the theses of the book is that when you walk into a voting booth and you're faced with a list of candidates, you may know something about the presidential candidate, you might know about the governor, but all the way down, you're not going to know those people. Most people you meet on the street will not be able to name their 2 senators, and they will not be able to name their congressional representative. We want them to know Democrats are fighting for you. We fight for the people. The other side fights for corporations and billionaires. And so it's not just about this election. It's not at 2022, 24, 26. It's about the next 10, 15, 20 years. I just want to say, before we get too deep, that if Democrats follow the prescriptions we give in the book, the suggestions, we are not going to change everybody. But if we can move 2%, and we think we can, from either not voting or from the red team to the blue team, that's enough to swing many, many elections.
Right.
And we also want to point out today's 16, 17, 18-year-old high school kids who don't read newspapers, don't watch David Muir on ABC News, they have to have a sense of which party does what. And so we're trying to reach those people as well. That's branding. Yeah,
totally get it. And the GOP has been doing this successfully since the 80s in a big way. Ask any random person, what does the Republican Party stand for? And they'll say, and good branding and good messaging, typically, the rule of threes, they'll say, low taxes, deregulation, and small government. And you say, and now the Republicans have been very successful in trying to brand the Democrats as the party of gay people and trans people who are a threat to your children, and obviously, we don't agree with that statement, but that's how they're presenting Democrats. Or
it's gay socialist communists. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. Or the Democrats are the party of black people. And this is the message that they've been using on conservative Hispanic radio in a big way in the last. I mean, from my colleagues in the radio business, what I'm hearing is that conservative Hispanic radio is basically pumping that message really hard. So you've got Republicans trying to brand Democrats and doing it successfully, I think, in many areas, many parts of the country. And Democrats not branding themselves. Is that a reasonable analysis?
That's right. Like you said, you see it in focus groups, actually. People are able to list off what Republicans stand for, what they care about, what they're fighting for. And it sounds emotional, it sounds reasonable, it sounds like things they want, like you said. But then you ask them what Democrats stand for, and they're not really able to tell you. They might know a few policy ideas here or there. They might know what one candidate said at one time. But there's not this overarching sense for what does that whole party believe? What are they fighting for? What are their values? Those things are not clear for people.
Right.
And the irony, of course, is that Democrats do have a whole long list of things almost 98% of Democrats care about. So that's what the book is about, how to get that message out for the long term.
Right.
And we have step-by-step suggestions about how Democrats can and should do that.
You talk about how 2017 was a perfect case study of what we did wrong. Can you describe that? Can one of you? In chapter 1, you say Ossoff in 2017 was a perfect case study of what we do wrong. He pushed local rational messages rather than a powerful emotional message that resonated. What does that mean?
Yeah, we contrast Ossoff back in that 2017 election, and Daryl was down in Atlanta at that point, living in Georgia, compared to Senator Ossoff and how he changed. If you recall back in 2017, the election 2018, there were a lot of Democratic candidates who wouldn't even say whether they supported Obama, whether they would even vote for Obama. So it's each individual Democrat out there, no, vote for me, I'm on your side. And they all lost. They all, remember Obama used the term, we got shellacked. We lost something like 65 House seats because they had no brand, they had no values, they have no core values that they imparted to the electorate. Ossoff talked about he wanted to make Atlanta a world-class transportation system or something like that. Mm-hmm. In the second election, when he ran for senator, he was a Democrat, a progressive Democrat who cared about health care and women's rights and LGBTQ rights and the environment, the things that Democrats en masse care about, and he won in a generally considered a red state, Georgia.
In the book, in your second chapter, you talk about, in fact, you explicitly suggest that Democrats should be wary of focus groups and consultants. I couldn't agree more, but please elaborate, either of you.
Yeah.
I will turn that over to Daryl because he runs focus groups and he is a consultant, so he is the one who put him down.
Okay.
So I do this for brands all the time. I'm running focus groups even today. But what I see, the way Democrats use them is kind of backwards and different from how Republicans use them. So Democrats right now will go to focus groups and say, what do people care about? What are the issues on people's minds? What should I be talking about to reach them? And they listen to that, and that's good. I guess we should know that, but that's different from sort of leading and telling them what we care about as a brand, as a party. And
so you're talking about essentially push polls.
Yeah.
Using focus groups as push polls. I mean, this is what, what's his name, the Republican who's on Fox News all the time does with his little focus groups. Yeah,
Frank Luntz?
Frank Luntz, exactly. Yeah, I find myself yelling at the TV when he does this because, he's not really running a focus group. He's running a push poll.
Well, they go to their base and say, these are the things we want to talk about. They make them up. Critical race theory is a great example. Right. It didn't exist. It's not something that came from their voters, right? They said, we are going to make this an issue. And then they message it and they put it out there. And then lo and behold, you end up hearing it back in focus groups. So I think Democrats can do better and say, these are the values that we know people care about. We actually have a great product to sell here. If you can think of the product versus the brand, people, if you take the Democratic branding away, people really agree with our Democratic stances on the environment, healthcare, Social Security, all these things that we just mentioned. But as soon as you kind of layer them together or try to put them as a Democratic brand, it falls apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we can say, we have this great product, but we need to say, what are those messages that are going to get those across to people in a very clear, emotional, powerful way that will show these are the things that Democrats care about. It's the same things you care about.
How do we develop slogans that demonstrate our beliefs and rally voters behind our cause?
How do we develop slogans that demonstrate our beliefs?
Yes.
Yeah. So first is being clear on what those beliefs are and what we stand for and what the values are that we want to communicate. And then one suggestion we have in the book is let's actually tap into the people who do this professionally. There are advertising agencies, copywriters who do this for all kinds of brands. They're experts at how to communicate with people, how to get a message across, how to create action, inspire action out of people. Let's tap into those people. Instead of the same political consultants who get mixed results at best, can we actually use advertising agencies and those kinds of people who do this for a living, have done it successfully for decades? Can we use them to develop new ideas, new slogans? And that's actually something you could go test with focus groups then and see what message are people receiving from this? What are they hearing? Is this resonating with them? Will this inspire them? So I would say you want to start with a lot, brainstorm a bunch, go out and test them, see the ones that are resonating most deeply with voters.
Well, and Thom, if I might, let me just go back to when you asked Daryl about focus groups.
Sure.
The summation, and it's in the book, and it's right from Daryl wrote that section, is you have focus groups and you keep messaging until you hear back at the focus group your messaging.
Oh,
Not
interesting.
what do the focus groups tell us and we will change. No, we have core values. So you get those branding messages out. And once we start hearing back from the focus groups, Democrats stand for all these things that we enumerated earlier, then we know our branding, not our current marketing, but our long-term branding, then we know it's working.
So who has done this right? Bernie Sanders?
Well, Bernie has a great, he's better than most. People understand his messaging. And we do cite him in the book as a man he's got a message and, he goes out, he's old, he's frumpy, he yells at people, but people know his values. And that's why in his state, he wins overwhelmingly every time he runs.
Yeah.
He's the perfect case study in authenticity, right? He's stayed true to his core beliefs for decades. People know him for it. He doesn't try to be a typical politician or look like one or sound like one. People appreciate that. It feels like it's coming from the heart. He really believes in it.
Yeah.
And it's been working for him.
There you go. Talking about branding and how to do this, and in just a moment ago, we were talking about how there have been, we've been experimenting with this. We've got data that goes back to the 1960s when the Democratic Party, did a major reinvention of itself with the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, et cetera. And what are the enduring messages, and who are the people who have successfully carried branded messages, not just marketing messages, forward? We discussed briefly Bernie Sanders, but what are the messages that history tells us work for Democrats, and why aren't they being used more regularly?
That's a very broad question.
Yeah.
We cite Bernie because he's one of the few who over decades has stayed true to his message. But on the other, well, I guess the same end, but AOC came along and knocked off Joe Crowley, who was ensconced, and nobody thought anybody had a chance of knocking off the Democratic incumbent. But she was able to brand herself as caring for the people. Not everybody's going to agree with every stance she takes, but she has figured out how to fire on all cylinders and get the job done. Stacey Abrams didn't do it for herself, but she did it for Ossoff and Warnock down in Georgia. But it's a matter of firing on all cylinders. We don't have the answer to every little cog in the machine of campaigning, but we're about branding, and we're saying if you do these things, some are small. We talk about yard signs. We talk about little things that Democratic candidates can and should do, but we also talk about the big picture, the multi-year picture. And so many candidates. Yes, Daryl, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say Obama was a good example, especially in his first campaign, of just inspiring people with hope and change you can believe in. A very inspiring message that resonated with younger people, brought new life to a whole, a campaign and politics in general, brought people into the fold. So I thought that was great. I just don't think it actually helped the broader Democratic Party. It was very much him and his, great personal brand, his great speaker, but it didn't translate to helping out the rest of the brand, unfortunately.
It didn't translate. 2 years later, as I said earlier, he got shellacked. The whole Democratic Party got shellacked.
Although he was still, to a large extent, embracing neoliberal policies that were broadly unpopular. I mean, some of them anyway. Free trade and stuff like that. And thus you get Trump coming along saying, I'll bring your jobs home. And all of a sudden people are going, oh, yeah, okay, cool. And Bernie was saying the same thing, by the way, I'll bring your jobs home. So
right, but when you talk about branding, the whole Obamacare is a classic example. The polls were done. Do you support Obamacare? No. What about the Affordable Care Act? Oh yeah, I support that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So is there, we have about a minute and a half here before we've got to wrap this up, but is there outside of we're fighting for you, a message that Democrats, that you think should be the core brand of Democrats, that you guys think?
I can take it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we think, it's very easy to paint this black and white picture, a binary. Republicans care about the rich, the wealthy, corporations. They're not caring about you. Democrats care about people. They care. They have empathy, right? They are every one of our policies can kind of fit under that larger umbrella idea.
How about,
right. We would like to actually see the Democratic brand be Democrats fight for the people, but not just for one campaign, all the time, so that the people who don't read the news, don't listen to the Thom Hartmann show, never pick up the New York Times or even the Wall Street Journal. They understand Democrats are on your side.
I would think fight for the people would be more powerful than care for the people.
Right. In the book, that's what we use. Democrats fight for the people.
Yeah.
Fight for the people.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and we're suggesting they keep that.
Are you guys hearing from from leadership of the Democratic Party that, hey?
The book has just come out. You're our first big podcast. Thank you for that. One of your regular guests, I believe, Mark Pocan, Congressman Mark Pocan.
Yeah.
He's a big supporter of the book. I was at the White House holiday party with him as his +1, and he introduced me to lots of Democrats, some of whom have already read the book.
Great.
Who want to pursue talking to us.
Great.
So, as I say, it's just out, and we're glad you're helping get the word out about it.
It's a brilliant book, Branding Democrats, a top-to-bottom reimagining of campaign strategies by Ken and Daryl Weber. Gentlemen, thank you so much for dropping by today. It's great talking with you.